With that, let's bring in our panel. Matt Bennett, former Deputy Assistant to the President for Intergovernmental Affairs under Bill Clinton, co-founder of The Third Way, Axios political reporter Steph Kite, and Steve Clements, editor-at-large for The National Interest. Steve, what's your take about the fallout 48 hours after and this Pentagon briefing today?
Well, look, I mean, the president dropped the F-bomb on Iran and Israel for trying to keep this war going. They're largely doing the same thing on journalists who've grabbed a low confidence report and are trying to, highlight that report as some example of the president not achieving what he's doing. We're going to learn one way or another whether we succeeded fully. But in my book, what the president's trying to do is remarkable in the sense that we just had a major attack by the United States against a major adversary in a very big way, and now he's trying to calm the waters and keep others who want to keep this conflict going, and I might put Israel in that category, from continuing to fuel these flames. And I think that is the sense and the context that needs to be added to this question about the efficacy of the attacks.
Matt?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's what Trump's trying to do. I think what he's trying to do is make sure he gets credit, which is the thing that he always tries to do. And look, I agree with Secretary Rice that we shouldn't pay much mind to a preliminary report that was leaked 24 hours later, because I remember in the run-up to the Iraq War that, Secretary Powell went before the UN with intelligence that turned out to be wrong about WMDs. And the problem in both cases is that we didn't have any eyes on the ground to confirm what we thought we might know about whether WMDs existed in Iraq at the time or in Iran now. So we just don't know. And I think it's wrong to suggest with any confidence that we do one way or the other.
Well, I mean, that briefing was pretty detailed today, and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs went into specific detail. Some lawmakers, Steph, were briefed up on Capitol Hill. Here's a couple of them.
I think it's safe to say that we have struck a major blow alongside our friends in Israel against Iran's nuclear program.
The only way we get certainty is with inspectors on the ground, making sure not only about the enriched uranium, but the fact that what this regime, it's a bad regime, might be trying to do in secret.
Steph, we can go round and round about the damage assessment. What is important now is what comes next. What Iran says, what Iran does. Are they getting to the negotiating table? Are they letting the IAEA in? What does come next?
That is the question, and that's the question that senators are raising as well. And Senator Lindsey Graham, I was listening to him talk to the press, after the briefing, and he raised a lot of questions about whether Iran is really willing to come to the negotiating table. Graham, of course, has very high standards for accepting any kind of deal with Iran, and he's watching very closely what Iran does. And what was interesting is both Republicans and Democrats coming out of that briefing said that, regardless of the impact of this particular strike, regardless of how much damage there actually was to these nuclear sites, the reality is if Iran wants to, again, build up their nuclear capabilities, they can, and that's what they're trying to avoid now moving forward. And so what they're watching for is whether negotiations continue in good faith, whether we see some kind of real outcome and movement in that direction. But of course, both sides are kind of spinning their version of things, with Democrats saying it's too early to tell, how much damage has been done, and Republicans insisting that the U.S. has set Iran back years.
Right. Israel and even Iran is saying that as well. Steve, the big, beautiful bill, we call that shorthand because the president has named it that, but it is this reconciliation effort, and it has to follow in the Senate the Byrd rule. So the Senate parliamentarian is down in the weeds, but has a lot of power to say what qualifies and what doesn't under this budget reconciliation. She is saying some things don't, and it's changing the dynamic of what they're fighting for over the weekend.
Well, look, this parliamentarian is well known to all sides. I would even say well respected by both sides. She frustrated the Biden administration significantly when they had their own version of a reconciliation bill, of course, around the time of the American Recovery Act, and she forced them to strip out things. She's doing that again because this reconciliation process is limited to extremely limited window. It is not the kind of voting that you would get that's not subject to cloture votes. And so she is creating consternation because she's not allowing things that would have to go through normal process and be litigated and legislated in the Senate in a way that can be forced to a 50+1 vote. And so it's serious, and we'll see what happens. But believe me, she did a favor for Josh Hawley, for a number of other senators who do not support the deep Medicaid cuts. And by stripping that out of them while they're complaining, she gave them a favor.
Yeah, it's Steph's piece. And Steph, you write, for Senate Majority Leader John Thune, it removes a thorny political problem for Republicans with a handful of GOP members deeply opposed to the provisions, but it will also force the Senate to find additional spending cuts to pay for the tax cuts that are the centerpiece of Trump's one big beautiful bill. I mean, they've got to do this over the weekend. It seems like they're kind of pushing it back, and the House then has to vote on it again before it gets to the president's desk.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs to be solved if they want to meet the July 4th deadline that Trump has set. And we know that Senate Republicans are working to try to get back into the bill some kind of similar provider tax measure that will, solve the problems that the parliamentarian has raised.
Okay, running out of time. Panel, thanks.